How you guys doing tonight? It's Captain Dylan Hubbard from Hubbard's Marina, doing a little live video, talking to you a little bit more about some deep sea fishing, nearshore fishing, whatever you want to learn about. We're going to talk about it tonight. We're going to start off talking a little bit about what's going on now, what's coming up, and a little bit more of a fishing seminar, fishing report. Right now, we have a lot of hogfish biting. This week, we've had some overcast conditions, and those overcast conditions have really helped the hogfish bite as of late. So right now, we've been seeing some nice hogfish action on our 10-hour all day, on our private charter trips. So the hogfish bite's been going pretty well this week. We're catching a lot of kingfish and mackerel near shore. Offshore, we're seeing a lot of tuna. The 63-hour came in. They did very well on the tuna fishing, so it was really cool. I don't know if any of you saw the video, the live fishing and weather report this morning, but we did very well on the 63-hour with the big queen snapper. Definitely a record as far as how many queen snapper we caught on this 63-hour. Some of them were very big. You can go to Tampa Bay Fishing Club and see a lot of the videos from, or a lot of the photos from our 63-hour. And Bob Harbison will have the 63-hour video coming to the Hubbard's Marina YouTube channel very soon. For all of you just tuning in, though, we're going to do a little fishing conversation, fishing Q&A tonight. So any fishing questions, whether it's fishing regulations, how-tos, tips and tricks, more about our trips, ask them in the comment box below on the video, and we'll get into it and talk a little bit about what you guys want to hear about, what you guys want to learn about, some of the tips and tricks we have to share. Chad Foster started us off with, does the 10-hour, 12-hour, or 12-hour night see better gags and snapper? Well, Chad, in our red snapper season during June, red snapper season for Hubbard's Marina starts June 1st and runs till July 22nd. So that red snapper season, during that time, we actually don't offer a 10-hour all day. All our 10-hour all days during red snapper season simply become 12-hour all day party boat trips. So that makes it simple for you. All you have to do for red snapper is a 12-hour all day on the party boat. You have a 12-hour extreme trip on the Flying Hub 2, or you have the 39-hour or the 44-hour. Keep in mind the 39 and 44-hour give you a 2-day bag limit and a lot of fishing time. The 12-hour extreme is going to get you to the same area we fish on our 39 and 44 hours and still give you a lot of fishing time. The 12-hour party boat trip is like the half day for red snapper and gag grouper. It just barely gets you out there. We're fishing anywhere from 40 to 60 miles on that trip, and you only get about 4 to 6 hours fishing time. So definitely, if you want red snapper, the best trips would be the 12-hour extreme or the 39 or 44-hour trips. But if you don't have... If you didn't book them soon enough, if they're filling up on you, you can always do the 12-hour party boat trip. That'll be a great option as well. But good question, Chad. So to answer your question, I would say the 12-hour extreme would be your best option for the red snapper during red snapper season. As far as gags, you can get those on the 12-hour night snapper trip. The 12-hour night snapper trip will not get red snapper, but you will have an option for the gag grouper on that trip. So those are your options. And let me turn this down. So hopefully that answered your question, Chad. Let's see what else we got here. Gary Jones asked for a red tide report. Easy. That's an easy one. There is no red tide that we've seen as of yet as far as Johns Pass is concerned or in our local area. But FWC does send out a red tide report every week, and you can check out their red tide report. You can shoot me an email. If you go to hubbardsmarina.com, on the right side at the top, you'll see the contact tab. You can click that and fill out the form, and it'll send me an email, Gary, and I'll be happy to forward you the FWC red tide report. But it's very, very minimal. Thank you guys for tuning in. Philip Jacobs said hello from Ohio. Manuel said hello. How you doing, buddy? Chad asked his question about the 10-hour. Preston Golden said, used us a year ago for his first DC fishing trip. Had a blast. I appreciate it, Preston. We look forward to fishing with you again in the near future at Hubbard's Marina. Remember, if you're too busy to go fishing, you're just too busy. David Sorrells asked, what is the best reel for our deep drop trip? The best reel for the deep drop trip, in my opinion, would definitely be the Daiwa Tanacom 1000. We use it quite successfully. You can use the Tanacom 750. They do have some other options like the Shimano Beastmaster. We use the precision reels with pretty good success as well. But we really prefer to use the Daiwa Tanacom 1000. It's a very light electric reel. It's got a lot of power to it. But Daiwa has some nicer electric reels, a few levels up above the Tanacom as well if you want some more power. But we use the Tanacom 1000 with pretty good success on our 63-hour trips, David. Jesse Suarez said, see you guys June 1st. We'll see you then, Jesse. Red Snapper and Gag Grouper open June 1st. We're looking forward to a 51-day Red Snapper season. They end July 22nd at 12:01 a.m. So July 21st is the effective last day for Red Snapper. We do have about a half dozen or so days left on the Flying Hub 2. If you want to book a Flying Hub 2 private charter, we've got some good availability left on the Flying Hub 1. If you have 1 to 6 people and you want to go deep for the private charters for Red Snapper season, we have plenty of room on our 12-hour party boat trip and a little bit of room left on the 39 hours in the 12-hour extremes. Manuel Fuertes asked if the deep drop trip uses electric reels. Yes, we would prefer you use electric reels, and most people, again, use those Daiwa Tanacom 1000s. We're typically fishing anywhere from about 350, 400 foot of water out past 900 foot of water. So an electric reel definitely makes a big difference when you're reeling up a 4 or 5 pound weight out of 800 foot of water. An electric reel is going to make all the difference in the world for sure. Larry Bledsoe, what's up, man? Thanks for tuning in. James from Salt Strong, I'm doing well, man. Thanks for tuning in as well. Bruce Rosen said, does anyone ever bring hydroglow lights to fish on the night trips? We do. We use hydroglow lights quite often, especially when we're out there sword fishing on our pelagic trips. So hydroglow lights definitely work pretty well. We don't use them on our 12-hour night snapper just because we're fishing shallower waters for the mangrove snapper, and we typically are moving fairly quickly. But we have used hydroglow lights on the Mrs. Hub. We did a 12-hour night snapper on the Mrs. Hub trip, and that boat we anchored up and we're targeting a large area for some mangroves, and we used the hydroglow lights quite successfully to attract a lot of snapper. So on private charters and on long-range sword fishing trips, we do utilize our hydroglow lights with a lot of success, Bruce, and I really enjoy them. They work well, they last well, and the new LED version of the hydroglow light is bad to the bone. Dan Christopher asked, how are the 12-hour night mangrove snapper trips doing? Those are doing really well. The mangrove snapper bite has not been at its best lately, but we're catching a lot of the porgies, lane snapper, vermilion snapper, and we're seeing a lot of yellowtail. The yellowtail bite is going very well lately here at Hubbard's Marina, and anywhere west of us, about 110 foot of waters where we see the yellowtail snapper really start to pick up. But anywhere from 80, 90 foot of water out west, you can find those yellowtail snapper. They really like a small strip of squid or a live shrimp, and I typically use a similar mangrove snapper. Whatever works for your mangrove rig will work for the yellowtail snapper as well. The trick seems to be a little strip of squid, and once you find them chewing, you can use a shrimp. And if you're on a smaller boat, like with your buddies or on a private charter, you can sit in an area and work them or chum them and bring them up to the surface and use jig heads as well. But to answer your question, Dan, yes, a lot of action on the 12-hour night snapper trips. We're doing well. Mangroves, not so much, but we are picking some nice ones too. Eric, hello from Jacksonville. Thanks for tuning in, man. Mr. Carrera, thanks for the compliment there, buddy. Jason Rotloff, I'm doing your 39-hour trip on the 19th. What's a good rod and reel combo to use on the 63-hour? Well, the question there, Jason, is a little bit of a long answer. On the 39-hour trip, I typically am bringing a couple different combination of rod and reels. I'll bring one rod and reel for the smaller snapper, the mangrove snapper. I'll bring another rod and reel for the red grouper, the red snapper, and then I'll bring another rod and reel for the bigger gags, or if gags aren't open yet right now, we'd be using it for amberjack. So I'd start off with I prefer my Daiwa Saltiga. It's a 2-speed LD50 Daiwa Saltiga on a Hubbard's Marina killer stick, and I use anywhere from 40 to 50. I like 50-pound braided line, and then a long fluorocarbon top shot of 50-pound test, and then about a 6-ounce lead, a swivel, and then about a 4 to 5 foot 50-pound leader with double snelled 6-aught hooks. With a thread fin chunk. I typically am going to brine those thread fins for the mangrove snapper. And then for my red snapper rod and reel, my red grouper rod and reel, I'd use around a 6-aught reel. Typically, I like those Pens or the Daiwas. Just a normal 6-aught conventional reel with 60 to 80 pound test and about a 60 to 80 pound leader. About probably an 8-ounce egg sinker on that one, a swivel, and then about a 5-foot leader with about a 7 to 8-aught circle hook. And then for the big fish, like the big gags, the big amberjack, I would use a 9-aught reel with about 80 to 100 pound test, about a 10-ounce lead, and about 100 to 125 pound leader, and about a 10 to 12-aught hook. The great thing about I think it's a great thing. I hope it's a great thing. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it as well. Our website, hubbardsmarina.com, you can go to fishing trips, and there's a list of all our different fishing trips. Click on the fishing trip you're interested in, and right there on the page, I personally wrote the tackle suggestions. So everything I just told you is right there on our website under the 39-hour trip tackle suggestions. We also have a YouTube video. If you go to youtube.com, search Hubbard's Marina, there's a YouTube video called How to Pack for a 39-hour Trip, and all that information's in there as well. So hopefully you can utilize some of that information, Jason. And if you have any more further questions, you can always email me at Captain, C-A-P-T, Hubbard at hubbardsmarina.com. You can go to hubbardsmarina.com and click contact and fill out the form. That'll email me as well, or message me through the Hubbard's Marina Facebook page. However you reach me, I'll do my best to answer any further questions you might have, or comment again. Stephen Martin, thanks for the thumbs up, buddy. Bruce Rosen, if a client rents a rod, does he or she get to troll? Good question. Unfortunately, we are bottom fishing. These are bottom fishing trips, so we do not rent a trolling rod and reel. A trolling rod and reel is typically a 2-speed reel. I prefer one of those Daiwa Saltis had a big game reel I loved, but unfortunately they don't manufacture them anymore. But the Shimano TLDs are a great starting trolling rod and reel. We have a TLD 50 in the office. It's a 2-speed that works very well for trolling. You can use a Penn International. You can use a couple different of these trolling setups. That Raptors work really well. You want something with the 2-speed setup with a big spool, something that's going to hold a lot of line. And the trolling rods and reels are specialty rods and reels that wouldn't work for mangrove snapper fishing. So the rod and reel you rent on a 39 or 44-hour trip is not going to be a trolling rod and reel, Bruce. So hopefully that answered your question. I've got the hiccups bad. I had some nice barbecue. Sorry about that, guys. Larry Bledsoe, what kind of bait do you recommend to catch sea bass? Sea bass is a good question. With sea bass, I catch a lot of big sea bass using live shrimp or pieces of shrimp. We also catch sea bass using the fiddler crabs. They'll bite a piece of threadfin or sardine as well, but my go-to bait for sea bass, if I was targeting them specifically, would definitely be shrimp on a light tackle. I catch a lot of sea bass when we're targeting hogfish as bycatch. So sea bass is a great eating fish. Down here in our area, we don't have them like the Northeast. around New England. We don't get the real huge sea bass, but we get some good sized sea bass. They're great eating, and I really like using the shrimp for the sea bass or the fiddler crabs. They love eating them crabs too. Hopefully that answered your question, Larry. Nathan Heath said, this is great. Most of the big elk hunters I follow on Facebook do this, and it's very helpful. Well, I appreciate that, Nathan. Hopefully I'm helping some of you guys out tonight as well. Manuel, forgot to ask, do you guys have plugs for the electric reels, or do you bring a battery? On our Flying Hub 1 or Flying Hub 2 deep drops, we have plugs on the private charter boats that are covered up. On the party boat, we do not have plugs on that because simply we do not do deep drops that often. We only do 4 of them a year. So having the plugs on the boat is simply not realistic because they would be broken by the next trip because of the repeated use of the boat for half-day trips and other trips that don't need those plugs. So on the Florida, on a 63-hour deep drop pelagic, you got to bring your own battery. If you privately charter the Flying Hub 1 for a 15-hour deep drop, you don't need your own battery. We have plugs on the boat. You can email me and I can send you all the information on the plugs so you know what kind of plug to bring with your rod and reel. Bruce Rosen asked if anybody's going out on the May 26th full moon trip. That's going to be a good one. The 12-hour night snapper, May 26th, got a light load, Bruce. It should be a great trip. The full moon typically brings us a great bite of snapper, so enjoy that trip, buddy. Ken Mercer, thanks for sharing the post. I appreciate that. Definitely, if you guys don't mind, like and share the video. I'd appreciate it. Get some more viewers here. Again, guys, anybody listening, just drop your comment into the comment box below, and I'll get to it as soon as I can. Daniel Bessemer asks, what size vertical jig do you like using? Well, Daniel, it really depends on what I'm fishing for. If I'm fishing for an amberjack, I'm going to use the largest vertical jig I can possibly stand to jig with. I like using for amberjack about a 10 to 12 to 16 ounce diamond jig. I really prefer the hammered diamond jigs. They seem to work pretty well. The hammered diamond jigs is just simply a diamond jig that's been roughed up a little bit, seems to reflect the light a little bit more sporadically, and typically helps get a little bit more action, in my opinion. But any diamond jig of the large variety, 8 ounces plus, works really well for the amberjack. For the scamp grouper, I like a smaller diamond jig, like a 4-ounce diamond jig. Works really well for the scamp grouper. The scamp, I'm working that jig right along the bottom. Captain Anthony loves the slow pitch vertical jigs made by Shimano, Daiwa, those kind of companies. They make those fancy slow pitch jigs. I prefer just the diamond jigs. They seem to work pretty well for me, but they definitely make a lot of fancy vertical jigs nowadays, and there's a bunch of different options and flavors and colors and types, but it's all about personal preference and size. The bigger the fish, typically the bigger the vertical jig is my train of thought, except for when it comes to the scamp. We catch monster scamp on small diamond jigs working along the bottom. The naked ball jigs work really well to bounce on the bottom for the red grouper, but vertical jig wise, it kind of depends on what type of fish you're trying to target. So if you want to comment again, Daniel, and I'll try to tune in that answer to what you're trying to target, and I'll have a better, more specific answer for what size vertical jig I would recommend. Dan Christopher said, love some yellowtails, doing a night snapper with us. If he was doing a 12-hour extreme, what should he be using to get that trophy gag? Trophy gag, I would definitely be using big tackle. 9-aught reel, 100-pound main line, 125-pound leader, fluorocarbon leader for sure. About a 10 to 12-aught circle hook, anywhere in that range. I would be using a big bait, big live bait, biggest live bait, biggest, most aggressive, meanest live bait you can find on one of the bigger ledges. And you just got to be patient. You got to drop that bait down slowly. Got to get it to bottom. You got to present your bait naturally. Once you get to the bottom, let it sit there for a minute. If you don't get bit right away, just lift your rod tip up slowly. drop it back down to bottom slowly, get that leader nice and stretched out. Be patient. Big fish, especially a big gag, requires big tackle, a big bait, and big patience in presenting that bait naturally. So it's very important that you just get it to bottom, let it sit on the bottom, and don't let your rod tip bounce. You got to pay attention, move your rod tip with the boat, and time, effort, being in the right place at the right time is how you get that big trophy gag. Excuse me. Sean Guard said hello from Citrus County. Went out 2 years ago, so ready to go out again. We'd love to have you again, buddy. Remember, if you're too busy to go fishing, you're just too busy. We'll see how many times I can fit that in the video. James said, will a Shimano OC 8000 with 50-pound braid on an extra heavy rod work for red snapper and gags? I assume that's a spinning reel. I'm not 100% sure, but that brings up a great point and something I love to discuss and debate. Spinning rods for offshore bottom fishing, in my opinion, not a good option. Personally, the only time I use a spinning rod when I'm out there fishing in deep water would be for using a jig head for the hogfish, or using a super light knocker rig if the bite's a little bit slow, for the mangrove snapper, the yellowtail snapper, or flatlining, or sometimes vertical jigging. But 99% of the time when I'm out there in deep water, especially bottom fishing, we're going to be using conventional rods and reel, or conventional reels. And the reason for that is when you're using a conventional rod and reel, you're holding the rod with this hand. You've got your hand on the reel. But if you get a big fish, you can use both hands very easily, and your elbow holding the foregrip of the rod is going to be in your gut, and that creates a nice little triangle, nice power platform, if you will. So you're not holding the rod with the strength of your arm. You have a lot more support, a lot more, I guess you would say, leverage on the fish. And if you get a monster and you're just totally getting railed to the bottom, you can put the foam of your foregrip on the railing of the boat. Or if you're on a small boat like our Flying Hub 1, you can put your leg up on the gunnel and put the foam of the rod on your knee, and use your palm to palm the reel, slow that fish down, and I'll put my rod foregrip on the rail and drop to my knees sometimes if I'm getting a real big one. We were filming with Salt Strong just last week, and we were going after big Goliaths, and as soon as I'd hook one, I'd reel down tight, put the foregrip of the rod on the rail, drop down to a knee, and palm that conventional reel until that fish slowed down and stopped, and then start working them up off the bottom. But when you're using a spinning rod and reel, you're holding the whole weight of that fish with one hand, and you have no support, no leverage. You're totally using one bicep to lift that fish up off the bottom, and you have no option to put that rod on the rail and continue to reel, because with the spinning rod, your line's going underneath that rod. So if you put your rod on the rail, your line's rubbing on the rail. So to me, fishing for big fish out in deep water, especially on a party boat, conventional reel is the way to go. If you're on a small boat with just a few buddies and they don't mind reeling up when you hook that big fish and getting out of your way and letting while he runs around the boat, then fine. Spinning rods and reels are a lot of fun. I like using light tackle. But I was born and raised on the back deck of a party boat, and I was always taught to get that fish from point A, which is the bottom, to point B, which is the fish box, as quick as possible. And the best way to do that is using a conventional reel, because you have the option of using the rail, you have the option of using your palm, you have a lot more leverage on that fish. So to answer your question, yes, a spinning rod and reel will work. Would I do it? No. Would I recommend it? No. Especially for bigger fish. But they are a lot of fun, and I love using my spinning rod and reel for hogfish, for flatlining. For this time of year is so important to have a spinning rod and reel with you, because the mahi-mahi, we caught some big mahi on our recent 63-hour trip, and chicken dolphins are all around. Last week when we were filming with Salt Strong, we were covered up in chicken dolphins. And if you didn't have a spinning rod and reel with them, you didn't really have a shot at them. So it's important to have a spinning rod and reel with you, but for using it for bottom fishing, in my opinion, is not so much a good idea. These huge spinning reels they make nowadays, they have the power, they have the drag, but in my opinion, they're more used for jigging or using top waters for those giant trevally or those big bluefin or yellowfin tuna, excuse me. So hopefully that answered your question. Long-winded answer. Randy Cornell. I don't know how to pronounce your last name, Randy, and I'm not going to butcher it, but you asked, can we rent an electric reel on the 12-hour extreme? Short answer, no. The reason why is the 12-hour extreme fishes the same area as our 39 and 44-hour trip. We fish anywhere from about 120 foot of water out past around to 250 foot on average. So you do not need an electric rod and reel for that depth of water. Typically, we're using manual hand crank rods and reels, the conventionals, like I mentioned before. So we don't recommend electric rods and reels, so that's why we don't rent them on a 12-hour extreme. John Kitson, what's up, buddy? Thanks for tuning in. Dallas Watson, the Penn Squall LD. The Penn Squall, they do make a lever drag Penn Squall. I think the 2-speed Penn is the Fathom, though. Larry, you're welcome. Feel free to ask any more questions, guys. Just put your questions in the comment box, and I'll get to them. Dan Christopher said, ask a fun question. Most Key West, or what we call gray snapper, or also known as a white grunt, ever caught on a half day by one person. My record is just about 75. One time I was using a 3-hook porgy rig, catching them 2 and 3 at a time, and a really, really good bite. So yeah, you can catch a lot of them on a half day trip, but it definitely takes a lot of effort and practice. And, that trip was crazy. 75 fish on a about 3 hours of fishing time. So literally almost a fish, 1 or 2 fish every minute. So, the 3-hook rig definitely paid off and the bite was crazy. So the big question is, how many beers has someone drank on a 5-hour half day? I've seen some high numbers of beer drank as well. But the 5-hour half days are a great trip. A lot of good eating gray snapper or white grunts on those trips. John Kitson asked, trip for 2 this Friday available, 12-hour extreme. Yes, we do our 12-hour extremes Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday from May 1st until the end of August. So the extreme trip is Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday this time of year. Typically, it's Wednesday and Sunday throughout the year, but from May to August, it is Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. Chris asked, what's my favorite bait or lure for a cobia? I prefer to have a rod and reel rigged right now, especially this time of year. I have a rod and reel rigged for cobia. Typically, I'm using a bucktail jig with a little bit of a rubber eel. Those bass lures, the Senko lures they make, a watermelon colored Senko, about 6 to 8 inches on a white bucktail jig is a great option for cobia. Cobia love eels. That little white bucktail gets their attention, and that rubber eel behind it keeps their attention. That works very well to sight cast cobia near shore and offshore. But I like using a flat line this time of year for the tuna, and the flat line for tuna will also catch plenty of cobia if they swim up. Just a tail hooked pinfish. That tail hooked pinfish, you got to hook it the back half of the pinfish right above the anal fin. That weights down the pinfish so his nose is pointing up to the surface, and it seems to help him kind of struggle up and keep him up in the surface in the top of the water column. About a 5/0 hook, typically a circle hook, so it can just sit out there and not worry about it. About 50-pound fluorocarbon, about 8 to 10 feet of that with braided line, so I have plenty of line capacity in my flat line for the tuna or the cobia. So hopefully that answers your question, Chris. How much is that trip May 26th? Marcelo Silva asked. I assume you mean the 12-hour night snapper. It's $129. But for anybody who wants to know about prices of trips, hubbardsmarina.com, you can click fishing trips on the top and then click fishing trips info. That'll list every single party boat trip we have, how far it fishes from shore, how much fishing time you have, and the price per person. Right there, all in one spot, makes it really easy. Again, hubbardsmarina.com, click fishing trips, then fishing trips info. Tony Stiley asked, how much fishing rod storage and fishing area does one person have? Well, it kind of depends on the trip, Tony, but typically on our sold out half day, you might have around 3 to 4 foot. On a 39-hour trip, you get a lot more room. We have plenty of rod storage. We ask that you kind of limit your rods. We don't want you to bring 30 rods for one person, but we try to be as flexible as possible. In red snapper season, red snapper is only 51 days long. In my opinion, it's a well overrated fish, but a lot of people like fishing during red snapper season because gags open, but gags don't bite well in the summer. They bite best in months ending in ER. So if you want gags, wait till the fall. They bite a lot better then. But if you want red snapper, it's a very short season and we get very busy. So we have to enforce more of those stupid rules like limiting the rods and reels. Technically, we're only allowed 3 rods and reels on a 39-hour or 44-hour trip. But we are very flexible with that as long as there's plenty of room. But if someone's making a problem about it, then that's when we'll address and enforce that rule. But we have plenty of rod storage. I always tell people to store their rods upstairs. I like bringing a zip tie or like a little wire tie. They sell these things at West Marine. Towards the front of West Marine, they have these things that help you keep your extension cords in place. It's basically like a piece of wire wrapped in foam, and you can use it to twist it up and hold your extension cords. It also works very well to hold a bunch of rods. And I'll lean my rods up against the stanchions upstairs on the second deck of the Florida and use that twist to twist them to a stanchion, and it makes great rod storage. Larry Bledsoe said, I'm going to Massachusetts on Friday. Should I get some live shrimp or raw shrimp? Well, Larry, I've never fished in Massachusetts, but I always like using live shrimp. And even if they die, fresh dead shrimp, it seems to work better than frozen shrimp. And they stay on the hook better. So I always would suggest live shrimp over anything else. Randy Cornelson. I apologize again if I mispronounce anybody's last name or first name. I'm doing my best. I'm no scholar. I'm just a fisherman, guys. So if I mispronounce your name, I apologize. Daniel said I answered his question about vertical jigs. I'm happy to do that, Daniel. Again, if anybody has any questions, drop them into the comment box and I'll try to answer them before my phone dies. I'm going to try to make it to 10 o'clock, but we've already chewed up half the battery and it's been about 40 minutes. So I'd imagine we're not going to make it quite to 10 o'clock. Everybody keeps doing the Step Brothers quotes in the live feed. I don't know why, but Step Brothers is a great movie. Definitely makes me laugh every time I read them. John Frazier said, never done the ocean fishing. What are the odds me and the wife are getting on a 5-hour trip in the morning or Tuesday if we show up early? We just happen to be in town. Well, John, we have plenty of room tomorrow on our 5-hour half-day trip. Come on down. I'll be there Monday morning and Tuesday morning, starting about 5:30 in the morning. The half day leaves at 8. You want to be there about an hour early. If you got a spinning rod and reel with you, bring it. A 4 to 5,000 series spinning rod and reel with about 20-pound braid or around 20-pound monofilament with about a 30-pound fluorocarbon leader, about a 3/4 ounce egg sinker, and a 4/0 hook will be a lot of fun on our 5-hour half day. A small piece of squid, or you can rent a rod and reel from us. We'll provide your rod, reel, and all your tackle. We have really nice Bass Pro Shops, offshore angler, Seafire reels on the boat. And like I said, I'll be there Monday and Tuesday morning to help get you set up, John. And I guarantee you and your wife will have a great time. Guarantee the boat will catch a lot of fish, and hopefully you and your wife will as well. So I look forward to meeting you, John. Come on down tomorrow morning at Hubbard's Marina. Again, the boat leaves at 8. You want to be there about 7 a.m. We are open from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. typically. Today we closed a little bit early, so the office is closed already, but you can call us tomorrow at 6 a.m. before you come and make your reservation. Or you can book now, John Fraser, on hubbardsmarina.com. Click fishing trips, and the first option is fishing trips reservations. You can book your 5-hour half day now while you're watching the video. Nathan Heath said, how's the outlook for the 12-hour extreme trips after the big opener on the first? Limits of gags and ARS. Nathan, one of my jobs is kind of managing expectations a little bit. And if you go into a fishing trip expecting to limit out, you are setting yourself up for a poor experience. We always try to catch a limit. That's definitely our goal, is to make sure our customers and our fishing friends and our clients are as happy as possible. But we're not commercial fishermen. We are recreational fishermen. We're going out there for the opportunity to fill that limit. And if we do, great. If we don't, we'll try to make sure we provide an excellent client experience with superior guest service, but we don't control the weather. We can't make fish bite, but we'll put you on the fish, and we'll do our darndest to make sure you have a great time doing it. Most of the time, if you know what you're doing, you'll have no problem limiting out on red snapper, and you have a good shot at limiting out on gags. But like I've said many times, gags open June 1st. That does not mean they bite well in June. Gags bite best in months ending in ER. Best month for gag grouper is November, but they bite well in October and December as well. So going out expecting to limit out on gags in June and July is not something that happens to everybody. You can do it. You're only allowed 2 gags per day, so it is possible. But I would not expect that, especially on a 12-hour extreme trip. You do get 7 to 8 hours fishing time, but that's not a ton of time. And the number one goal in red snapper season is red snapper. It's a very short season, so the captain is going to be focused on catching the boat limit of red snapper. Once we do that, then we're going to transition into trying to focus on gags, and we'll do our best to catch a little bit of both. But if you were to ask me what is the chance of limiting out on gag grouper and red snapper on a 12-hour trip, it'd be pretty low. On a great fishing day, you have a shot at it, especially if you know what you're doing. But gag grouper really take a lot of experience. Even some of the most experienced anglers still have trouble catching gag grouper. Red snapper shouldn't have a problem limiting out on red snapper on any 12-hour extreme. We're out there in deep water. The red snapper are they're very, very populated. They'll eat just about anything. So the chances of limiting out on a red snapper on 12-hour extreme trips, 39 hours, 44 hours, no problem. On a 12-hour party boat trip, that's the half day for red snapper. It's our shortest trip with a chance for red snapper. Might be a little bit more difficult, but if you know what you're doing, shouldn't have a problem limiting down on red snapper. Limiting down on gags, that's the challenge. In October, November, December, you have a much better shot at it. Hector Lopez asked, how's the mangrove snapper bite been lately? Mangrove snapper bite and red grouper bite have been historically some of the worst I've ever seen in the last couple months. Normally the red groupers start biting well by the end of March into April, and they're biting very well by this time of year. They just didn't really pick up. I don't know if it's a cyclical thing, if they moved around. Some people say the red tide in 2014 really decimated the population, but they're in the middle of a stock assessment for red grouper right now, trying to dig into what's going on and why we aren't catching them. But people are across the Gulf struggling to catch a bunch of red grouper. We are seeing them out deep, but the red grouper bite near shore has been pretty non-existent as of late. Mangrove snapper, we're seeing them out deep. We're catching them here and there. There's a ton of mangrove mangrove snapper in the bay and inshore and along the beaches inside Johns Pass. They're swarming. The 8, 10, 12-inch mangroves are swarming underneath the dock and underneath Johns Pass Bridge. But the nearshore mangrove bite, we typically see a nice big push of mangrove snapper as we come into summertime, anywhere from 60, 70, 80 foot of water out to about 180 foot of water, but they've been pretty difficult lately. A lot of times it's difficult to get past the red snapper to the mangroves, and I'm really hoping the surge in red snapper population is not displacing our mangrove snapper and red grouper, but there's a real good chance of that. I think I lost my spot here. All right, here we go. James said, what's my personal best gag grouper? About 28 pounds is my personal best, personally. But we've seen a lot of 40-pound, 50-pound gags. One of the biggest on our boats was probably pushing 70 pounds that I can remember. So we get a lot of big gag grouper. I personally haven't gotten a truly monster gag myself. I've gotten some 30-plus pound red grouper. I've gotten some big sailfish, a lot of nice big trophy fish myself. But that big, huge 40-plus pound gag still eludes me, James. They're hard biting fish, man. They're not that easy. I don't know many people that can say they're in the 40-pound club for gag grouper. Besides Kent Sarr Jr., I see you tuned in. You've got a couple of those. Jake said, what trolling lures and colors are the tuna and AJ's hitting on? We'll be doing a 39-hour July 22nd. Well, July 22nd, amberjack will not be open. Amberjack are open May, August, September, and October. So at the end of July, amberjack will not be open. Tuna bite best in the spring, in the cooler months. So anywhere from, let's say, late October, November into like April, May, the tuna bite best. But we do see tuna through the summer, Jake. Right now, we're catching a lot of tuna on the green mackerel. Green sardine, Rapala X-Wrap, and the blue mackerel. Or I might have that switch. Maybe it's green mackerel and blue sardine. And then also the mahi color, Rapala X-Wrap Magnums, the 30s. Stretch 30s, we're catching a lot of them. I know my buddy Captain Joe Masano caught a nice huge amberjack and a nice tuna on the pink Yozuri stretch 30s. So a lot of, I think the lure color is more made to catch the fishermen walking down the aisle at Bass Pro Shops. So I always look for transitions. The fish, when you're trolling past them, they're looking up and they see that transition in the water column, the silhouette, if you will. So a more natural color is my preference, but a little bit of everything works. Even the redhead white body seems to work really well for the wahoo. So I think it's just transitional colors, and when it's trolling by, the sound of the boat will pique their attention. That the bubble trail, the cavitation from the props or the ventilation keeps their attention, and then they see that spread of baits, and they just can't help themselves when they see those silhouettes going by. So hopefully that answered your question. Marcelo Silva, thanks for the kind words, buddy. We appreciate you, and thanks for your continued patronage. Willis Snapper, Jake, the red snapper season is June 1st to July 22nd at 12:01 a.m. So you have to have your red snapper on the dock by July 21st at midnight. So July 22nd will not be a red snapper trip. Phil, yep, I got the fade going on. It's a couple days old. I go to Clean Cuts Barbershop across from the Seminole Home Depot, and my boy Miguel does a great job, so I appreciate the kind words on my haircut. Daniel said, what's my opinion on skirted trolling lures? Personally, I like the dredge skirts. We do really well with the plastic man, the bubble jets, that's the word I was looking for. On the outriggers, the plastic heads, lighter trolling skirts that kind of bounce along the surface, catch air, and then shoot the bubble jet. They work very well on the outriggers. The dredges, I really like the mahi colored dredge with 4 or 5 baits right in a row with the hook on the last bait. I like the cedar plugs. But I definitely would say our go-to trolling lure right now has been the Rapala X-Wrap Magnums, the 30s or 40s. They've been doing really well on a lot of different fish with those Rapala lures. And they're easy because you don't need a planer. You don't need any type of trolling weight. It's really easy to rig those up. So hopefully that helps. Bruce Rosen said, how do we become a member? We have a loyalty program called our Regulars Club. You can join the Regulars Club to get discounts on the trip, and you get some other benefits of being a Regulars Club member. You can email me, again, Captain Hubbard, C-A-P-T, Hubbard at hubbardsmarina.com. Shoot me an email, and I can send you the information on our Regulars Club. But it's a loyalty program. It's not a discount program. So what that means is you got to go fishing 10, 15, 20 times a year or more to qualify for the club. You pay a little bit of money to join, and that's all it takes to become a member. But if it does end December 31st of this year, so if you paid tomorrow, you'd only get about a 5.5 or a 6.5 month membership. We will start 2019 signups for our Regulars Club sometime around October 2018, October, November 2018. If you paid then it would run until December 31st of 2019. So it is not a calendar date to calendar date type thing. It runs to the end of the year, and it's simply a loyalty program, not a discount program. But to answer your question, Bruce, to become a member, just stop by the office or shoot me an email, and I'll send you all the information. Daniel said, how do I rig up a Rapala lure so they dive correctly? First of all, you go the right speed. That helps them swim properly. About 7 knots, 7 to 8 knots works really well. Anything faster than about 7, 8 knots, the Rapala lures won't troll right. But I like just simply using braided line with a about 6 to 7 feet of fluorocarbon with a line-to-line knot. If you use a loop, or if you use a big swivel or a steel leader or wire leader, sometimes they won't track right. And you only can use them for 2 or 3, 4 or 5 fish if you're lucky. Once you get a big fish hitting it once or twice or 3 times, that Rapala lure will get a little bit funky on you and not troll correctly. So if yours isn't 10% battery life left, boys. So we don't have much time here, guys. So if you have any questions, definitely drop your question in the comment box, and I'll try to get it answered before the phone dies here, guys. So I appreciate your questions. We're going to be coming up into red snapper season. One thing, I don't have any questions here, guys, so I'm going to talk a little bit about venting fish. So very important that you vent your fish. Barotrauma is simply a gas buildup when you catch a fish in deep water and bring it up quickly, especially with these new high-speed or 2-speed reels. Barotrauma is very, very significant. So you have to vent fish. If you're fishing anywhere deeper than about 3 atmospheres, an atmosphere is 33 feet. So if you're fishing past about 70, 80, 90 foot of water, and you catch a fish you're going to release, it will die unless you vent that fish in most cases. Easiest way to vent a fish is simply use a venting tool or some other type of venting device, and simply stick that venting tool in right below the pectoral fin. You can do it right where the pectoral fin meets the fish. I like doing it right around the tip of the pectoral fin towards the bottom of the belly cavity. Just simply stick that in at a 45-degree angle up towards the fish's mouth, and then once you get underneath the scale, you can go straight into the fish. I always use my thumb and forefinger as a guide to make sure I don't stab the fish with the venting tool, and make sure all that gas escapes before you throw that fish fish back. We're going to be very strict on it this year at Hubbard's Marina. So if you're planning a 39-hour trip with us, a 12-hour extreme trip with us, a 12-hour party boat trip with us, we have a how to vent fish video coming soon. We're going to have a poster about it in our waiting area. And if you are throwing fish back and not venting them, it will not be so good. So make sure you learn how to vent fish. If you don't know how to vent fish, we'll teach you how to do it. But don't throw fish back this season without venting them. It's very important, guys. Melinda Crosby said, what is the trick to catching a hogfish? The easiest trick to catching a hogfish is booking a private charter. We'll definitely try our best to show you how to do it when you're out fishing with us. The best trip for a hogfish right now, if you're doing a party boat fishing trip, would be a 10-hour all day. But always the best option for a hogfish would be a 5, 6, 8, or 10-hour charter aboard the Hub, or Flying Hub 2 or Flying Hub 1 or the Mrs. Hub. And the trick to hogfish is they're a very unaggressive, super smart, very leader shy fish. So you have to use light tackle, typically a 4 or 5,000 series spinning reel. They're very leader shy, so you have to use fluorocarbon, about 30-pound fluorocarbon. I like using a 15, 20, 25-foot leader, so you're hiding that braided line from them. And then I use braid because it gives me more sensitivity. Sometimes they bite very, very softly. Less is more with the hogfish. No swivels, no beads, no big lead. You want to go super light lead, lightest you can possibly still feel. And then I like using live shrimp or fresh dead shrimp or a fiddler crab. And the trick to catching hogfish that I always tell people, and the biggest trick I've learned, is you gotta feed the other fish. To catch your first keeper hog, you gotta catch 100 gray snapper or grunts and get them out of the way. Those gray snapper, those porgies, those sea bass, those lane snapper, those strawberry grouper, they're more aggressive, and you're going to catch a bunch of them before everything else stops biting and you start catching hogs. Typically, hogfish are on small ledges, rock piles, areas of hard rock bottom with sea fans. You got to get set up on that area. You got to chum the other fish or fish for the other fish. And when you get set up on a spot, you'll start getting bites. Everybody's catching fish. Then you'll get to the point where, all right, the fishing's slowing down. Then you'll get to the point where it's like, oh man, no one's catching fish. And at that point, that's when you start targeting the hogfish. And all of a sudden you'll catch one hogfish. It might be a short hogfish. It might be a female hogfish. It might be a little baby hogfish. But once you catch that first hogfish, it's like someone turns on a light switch, and then bam, 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 everybody catches hogs. And then as soon as they turned on, they'll turn off. And you got to go to a new area, set up, and do the same thing. But if you find a hogfish in an area, they live in harems. So for one male hogfish, there'll be 5, 6, 7 female hogfish. So if you catch a small female hogfish, stay there, keep focusing on the hogs. Another big male is hanging out there somewhere. And if you catch one hogfish in a small area, there's more hogfish on other ledges in that area. So when I catch a hogfish on a ledge, I'll move to a ledge a quarter mile, half mile away and try that one too. Because a lot of times once you find a hogfish in an area, that whole area will hold hogfish. So stick and move and chum those other fish or fish for those other fish, fish them down. And that's when you start getting the hogfish. Less is more and lighter is better. So hopefully that helped you, Melinda. Come out fishing with us and we'll show you more tips and tricks on the water. John Kitson asked if we have venting tools on the boat. Yes, we have venting tools on the boat. We carry them in our shop. But I would strongly recommend you have a venting tool on your person when you're out fishing in deep water. If you don't know what a venting tool is, we'll show you. We sell them in the shop, and we'll give them to you on the boat. Everybody's got to have a venting tool, and you got to learn how to do it. That way, when you're out fishing with your buddies, you're fishing with your friends, you're fishing on another boat, you can show everybody around you how to vent fish. Venting is very important because you want to eliminate the dead fish you're throwing back. If you catch a fish and throw it back, a lot of times those fish, especially if you don't vent them, are going to die. So you got to prevent dead discards, which is discarded fish that dies. The best way to do that is venting fish. So if you vent your fish, you're going to prevent the dead discards. You're going to put more fish back into the water healthy. There's going to be more fish to spawn, breed, and hopefully produce more fish. And hopefully over time, if everybody's venting fish, you're going to get a lower dead discard percentage, and you're going to have a better stock assessment that says we have more fish in the Gulf and we're going to get longer seasons. So the idea is everybody's venting fish or descending fish or minimizing the dead discards. We're going to have longer seasons. So we got to get everybody on board. We got to all do our part to preserve our fishery and make sure we're doing the best we can to make sure our kids have a fishery out here in the Gulf to go fishing. And I go to a lot of different stuff and try to do my best to preserve our fishery and help our fishing access, because I don't care if you're fishing with me on my boats or chartering my boats or on my party boat or on your boat or your buddy's boat or on the pier or on the dock or on a raft or on the beach. Whatever you're doing, you're a recreational angler. It doesn't matter what mode you use to access the fishery, you're a recreational angler. And I believe that we should have an open access public fishery with the most amount of access possible to have the opportunity to catch fish and to show other people how to catch fish. Because that's what it's all about. I love getting other people hooked on fishing, especially kids. Do yourself a favor and take a kid fishing, as Captain Billy Nobles always says. So hopefully it looks like I answered all the questions here, guys. I don't see that I have any questions, or hopefully I didn't miss any questions. We'll wrap this thing up before our phone dies here. So I appreciate you guys tuning in. It looks like this was pretty popular on Sunday nights. So we're going to stick to Sunday nights probably moving forward. So tune in Sunday night for our live Q&A fishing seminar every week here at Hubbard's Marina. And then don't forget May 26th at 2 p.m. That's this coming Saturday. You have a chance to win a free fishing trip with us here at Hubbard's Marina. You can win a free 10-hour all day or a free 5-hour half day at Bass Pro Shops this Saturday, 2 p.m. We'll see you there. And then if you can't make it to Bass Pro Shops, Newport Richie, 7 p.m. Tuesday, May 29th, Real Animals. We're going to be doing a fishing conversation with the man, the myth, the legend, Captain Mike Anderson at Moss Nissan. Again, Tuesday, May 29th, 7 p.m. We hope to see you there. Let's see if it looks like we're getting a few more questions here. John Kitson asked about, Freddie asked about our 10-hour trips and the kingfish. We are catching kingfish on our 10 hours. We're seeing some nice kingfish and mackerel still near shore. It's just not a lot of size to them. Most of the size is offshore right now for the kings. And we're seeing some tuna offshore with the kings as well. Near shore, mostly smaller kingfish in the 8, 10, 12-pound range. And some mackerel mixed in as well. We are seeing cobia near shore along the beaches and in the bay. So that's a good option on the 10-hour. On the flat line, you might get some cobia or one of those kingfish. But we're not getting any real big size, to be upfront and honest with you right now. So it looks like that's all the questions I have, guys. I appreciate y'all tuning in. Hopefully you enjoyed this little hour-long fishing conversation and Q&A with us here at Hubbard's Marina. Remember, if you're too busy to go fishing, you're just too busy. And we'll see you next Saturday, May 26th at 2 p.m. at Bass Pro, or May 29th, Tuesday at Moss Nissan with Captain Mike Anderson for a fishing conversation. Or we'll see you every Sunday night, 8:30 p.m. here live on Facebook. And you guys have a great day. Don't forget about our morning live videos. Every morning around sunrise, we do the live fishing and weather report. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the videos. And remember, if you're too busy to go fishing, you're just too busy. I think I said that half a dozen times, but no big deal.